What are the most common nutrient deficiencies that you see?
Easy. You see a lot of insufficiencies in magnesium, vitamin D, potassium. Everybody forgets about potassium.
Let's talk about homocysteine and what nutrients are important.
Yeah, so homocysteine is the sandpaper to our arteries. It's not going to poke a hole in your vessels today, but if it is over a long period of time, it probably will.
What's some of your favorite studies around matcha?
It's amazing how fascinating and intelligent nature is. It's like, we're going to make this herb, this plant, have caffeine in it, but oh, by the way, we're just going to add theanine to it. And whoever decided that, kudos to you.
So what are your favorite natural ways to support these pillars of good sleep? Ralph, welcome back to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
So we're recording here where we consult people around the world, but we could be anywhere, right? And I do travel a lot for work, but I choose to be in the woods of southwestern Pennsylvania. And you've been here before, which I love to hear.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So what brought you to Pittsburgh last time?
It was a Jets Steelers game.
So are you a big Jets fan?
I grew up a Jets fan. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the biggest team?
That's my team. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's the Giants, right?
Yes. Yeah, but there's a Giants. On the football side, it's Giants and then Jets. But if I had to pick my New York team, it would be the Yankees, and I'm not sure we can argue with their success.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So anyways, you thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. So what have you been up to since we caught up last? Like what's been going on in your life?
What have I done in the past few years?
Yes, yeah, fill me in.
Quite a bit. As my role as Chief Science Officer at AG1, really been focusing on working on how we can advance the product and the brand as a whole from a science and R&D perspective. So that's a huge undertaking, which is incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
On the other part of it is I still see patients privately as a practice, because I do believe that if you are going to be the Chief Science Officer of a company that's responsible for making products to make people feel better, then you should probably also see people to see if those things actually work, right?
I love that you do that still. I mean, doesn't it keep you sharp like nothing else? Like I see colleagues of ours like in the health space, in the medicine space, that they don't practice. They're still super smart, right? But you could tell the look in their eyes. There's a rustiness. There's a rustiness to like the real life application of all this.
It keeps me from getting rusty is the exact word that I usually tell to my colleagues, but also to my patients. They're saying, well, how do you have time to do both? And I said, well, this is part of my job, right? My job is not just the Chief Science Officer. My job is not just Dr. Ralph Esposito. I need to incorporate both of these things to make sure that things actually work. Because it also works the other way around, right? Because if you see something where you're giving it to hundreds of thousands of people and you get some type of signal, but you don't see it in the practice, then it actually leads you in the other direction to say, hey, what's actually going on there? Why are so many people saying this thing? And how do we kind of go back the other way and understand how we can apply this to human beings? And that's actually a philosophy that I use is, when we look at scientific studies, we say, well, in this 10,000 person study, we saw this effect, but does that apply to the person in front of me? Because there are people in that study that didn't note benefit. Why didn't those people notice a benefit? And if you could work with individuals to see how do I apply the research of the N of 1,000 or N of hundreds of thousands to the N of 1, that makes a world of a difference in helping that person and then also making products.
Yeah. And in all your spare time, you're also teaching as well.
I do, for fun. Genuinely, it's incredibly rewarding and so fun. So I'm adjunct at NYU in the nutrition and dietetics program. I help teach dietitians or people who will be soon to be dietitians on integrative and complementary medicine. So what are vitamins, what are minerals, what are certain herbs? How do you do proper research on these ingredients to understand are they applicable? And then also because, registered dietitians are seeing a lot more of herbs and supplements in their practice, even in the hospital, they have a little bit of a getting their feet wet and how to apply this into clinical practice.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit before we started recording is that the future RDs of our country are excited about this growing body of research, right?
Incredibly. So my team actually was at FENSI, which is one of the largest RD conferences I think all year. And the amount of RDs there and it's mostly an RD conference, the amount of RDs there that were interested in learning more about this. And now more companies are moving into that space, and not just supplements, but also food and functional foods and other areas that are having an impact on improving people's health. Everything from fiber to proteins to prebiotics to probiotics, etc.
What's your thoughts on the state, or like historical, but also the current state of nutritional research? Obviously, I think we both can agree it's like better than ever, but still there's some significant issues, right, within the funding and the studies that are done.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I think there's two things, and I've said this many times before, there's probably two things more controversial than nutrition, that's politics and religion. But nutrition and nutrition science is very much right there in the runner-up. And so when you get to a science that's very largely opinionated, and you can look at the research in multiple different ways, it creates a lot of gray when it comes to that. And so, we can all agree that ultra-processed foods, bad, right? Like, we know that that's pretty obvious. But we've known that for a long time. And if we're going to say that over the past 100 years that the advancement that we've had is identifying that processed and ultra-processed foods are problematic, then where have we been spending the rest of our time in a lot of this research? So, in the past, we've had the DRIs and the RDAs, which have been, questioned as well, and we're making advances. Where I think we need to go and spend more attention is on the precision nutrition aspect of things. How can we take nutrition and utilize it from not a pharma model, but utilize the same method of thinking of, if we want to make pharmaceuticals, or if we are making pharmaceuticals that target specific issues, how can we apply some of that to food? Now, I think some of that is not possible, because you don't eat vitamin C. You don't eat vitamin D. You eat foods that contain these things, plus thousands of other molecules and constituents that have synergistic effects. So we really need to figure out, how do we study this a little bit more? And if we can first identify the target, then the nutrition aspect of it becomes a little bit more easier, rather than just having the kitchen sink approach and say, eat, a 30, 40 carbs, protein, fat diet.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to unpack all that stuff. So go back to the RDA, DRIs. We talked about it a little bit last time you were here, but for people that maybe aren't up to date on where do these recommendations even come from? Where do you see the historic lack of when it comes to optimal health?
Yeah. So these DRIs, and this is not controversial at all. I mean, these were designed to prevent deficiency. We had vitamin C to prevent scurvy, and different, vitamin D to prevent rickets, and et cetera. That's why these things were designed, and they've done an incredible job, because a lot of those things are not found today. We don't see a lot of these diseases. Although I do have some people on occasion or colleagues who will see scurvy on occasion, because just people are eating so many highly processed foods that they're not actually getting the nutrients. Yeah. But when you look at the DRIs, a lot of these, the determination of whether they're fit for most people, if you go deep into the research, it's actually questionable on how we determine some of these things. So, for example, the DRI for vitamin B12, 2.4 micrograms per day, no one ever in my clinical practice have I ever said, all you need is 2.4 micrograms of B12 to solve your homocysteine levels, or to solve a peripheral neuropathy, or anything like that. So that's when we get into this category of problem state versus, deficiency solving. And then there's a little bit of a gray area of, if it's not a deficiency, and then there's insufficiency, which are based on something called the EARs, which is the estimated average requirements, which are like, okay, you're not in a deficient state, but you're not getting enough. But even if you achieve that, that's not necessarily optimal. And optimal really comes to more advanced biomarker testing. How do we look at things at functional markers like methylmalonic acid and homocysteine, which is one of them, or we're looking at other metabolites of vitamin D rather than just saying 25-OHD3. There's so many different ways that we can go to identify which nutrients specifically solve those problems.
Yeah. And you mentioned precision medicine, precision nutrition. Now NIH is looking at this and like, what's the new frontier look like when it comes to nutrition, of using AI and microbiome health and genetic health, of how do you tailor this? And I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, like how much of this certainly at this point, still needs humans to figure this out. And can you fully tailor it? And that's what we've always done on a clinical level and what you do, like how can you take the science and apply it on a bio-individual basis? And there's a lot of nuance and context to that can't be fully shown today in AI, right? Or data or even studies. So I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? The future of precision using AI in nutrition?
Garbage in, garbage out is the way that I would say is how it works. But also gold in, gold out, right? If you put good data in, you're going to get very good outputs from it. Mm-hmm. But if you put trash in and data that is incomplete, if you put just an abstract in, or if you put data that doesn't put the entire data set, you can't expect AI, which has no context of other, to be able to determine whether this is accurate or not. So there is artificial intelligence, which I'm a purist in nature, which I think leads me to believe that human intelligence is still going to be a major factor. AI doesn't have a spidey sense, but humans do. Mm-hmm. And there's some things where you'll read an output from AI and you're like, I'm not really sure how that's reading. Mm-hmm. But now we're getting a lot more advanced and understanding exactly how to use AI appropriately. And so when you look at AI, you want to incorporate, or you want to make sure that the AI has access to very good data, a huge data set, and also is incorporating, from a science and nutrition perspective, is incorporating systems biology. That, I think, is the missing key when it comes to AI, because the way that AI is typically trained, if you just put it to like OpenAI or Claude or any other, AI engine, it will take the data and it will use it in a reductionistic model. It's like, here's the data that showed vitamin C treats, XYZ condition, and that's what our outcome is going to be. And we're going to pull from all the data that isolates vitamin C. But if you don't incorporate everything else what about the thousands of other studies that are incorporating vitamin C plus citrus bioflavonoids, or vitamin C plus zinc plus collagen? Mm-hmm. How are you incorporating all of that stuff? And that's where I think systems biology really comes into play, is because you can then incorporate the body and the system as a whole and multiple molecular targets that AI would not even consider looking at until you advise it to do so. And that's where you need the humans involved. Yeah, right. And at least at this point, right, it's changing so dramatically, AI, right? Until we're all subservient to the AI overlord. And I don't want to devolve into this conversation. But okay, so go back to the people out there in the world that say there's not a lot of, like, we're about the evidence. We're evidence-based. And there's not a lot of evidence around supplementation or nutrition. Like, can you bust that myth or confirm it? No. Well, it's a great question, and we hear it all the time. And not even just in the supplement and food and nutrition industry, but even in academia, even in clinical medicine, we hear a lot of these things. And there are people who will say, well, there's no evidence behind these things. And yet some of these are even used as pharmaceuticals. There is a pharmaceutical form of vitamin B12, B6, and folic acid. Yeah. Right? So why does the evidence apply to that and not to these other things? So I don't try to separate it between pharmaceutical or nutraceutical or supplements. It's what is the data around this agent, right? That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about agents, and I know it sounds very, broad and abstract, but, vitamin C is an agent the same way that metformin is an agent. Yes, obviously different agents, and they do different things, but there's a tremendous amount of research on a lot of these things. So for example, curcumin is one of the most researched supplements. If you just go on PubMed and type in curcumin, you'll hit, I haven't checked this morning, but I'm sure it's thousands of articles on the topic. Mm-hmm. Now, sure, some of these are in animals and some of these are in vitro, and not all of them are human. But to say that there's no evidence is just dismissive of the research. Yeah. And so what I typically find is that those who say that there's no evidence have not done the actual research to understand if there is evidence or not. Now, I'm also in that camp where I'll say, hey, there's a ton of research on this nutrient, curcumin, but not a ton on this other one. So I'm not, just because I'm in the supplement industry, doesn't necessarily mean I'm a fan of all supplements. I choose and pick which ones I think are going to be effective and have the research behind them for people.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the larger kind of point I was making earlier, is like there's so much more money being spent on pharmaceuticals, right, versus nutrition. Why is that? Do you have an easy answer for that?
It's really hard. It's really hard to study nutrition.
There's so many variables, right? A drug is just a drug versus like the variables of food and supplementation.
Yes, and it's also the affinity of nutrients for certain receptors are different than those of pharmaceuticals. So let's take two nutrients or two agents that have very similar actions, but one is a supplement and one is a pharmaceutical. Rosuvastatin and red yeast rice, right?
Yeah.
They're both technically statins, and actually statins, one of the statins was derived from red yeast rice, right? So both are the same type of agent in terms they're both statin medications that help lower cholesterol due to a target on HMG-CoA reductase, right? We can get into all the specifics, but one has a higher affinity or a higher activity for that specific enzyme than the other. And so when you have the advancements of pharmaceutical medicine, which is to be respected. I mean, it is incredible the type of chemistry and biology and research that goes into that to target that receptor or that agent or that molecule or that enzyme so specifically and so strongly. That is the difference between a supplement or a nutrition and a pharmaceutical. And so what we don't want to do is use nutrition as a pharmaceutical. We want to use nutrition as a therapeutic. So I often correct a lot of my students where they say we want nutrition as medicine. I agree, but not the same type of medicine that we consider when it comes to pharmaceuticals, because the power is so different.
Yeah, right. It's a therapeutic tool.
That's right.
Absolutely. And don't you think that, I mean, do you take this sort of view, this sort of cynical view, or are you more, no, this is just a matter of logistics, of the vested interests and sort of the preferential treatment that pharmaceutical has because of industries versus food or supplementation? It's a little bit more, it's from the earth.
Yeah. So it's two different industries and they have two different objectives.
Yeah.
And, when I was going through my training in nutrition and in naturopathic medicine and in acupuncture, I noticed as I was going through my training that there were kind of these two groups. It was the groups that were like, don't listen to them. They're bad. They all have a different incentive and we're going to figure out how to do it the natural way. And then there's the other group who's like, no, we have to collaborate. We have to do everything. Like all of this stuff is nonsense. You must use medications or pharmaceuticals or et cetera. And I think each extreme is problematic. And when you look at the research behind pharmaceuticals, there's obviously a lot more funding and support there because the outcomes are very clear and straightforward. And so if you were to do a study on the Mediterranean diet, you would say, yeah, I would put a lot of funding into that because I want to support that diet, which is pretty much undefeated at this point when it comes to the amount of research behind it or other similar types of diets. But there's not a lot of support or financial incentive to do those things. If I were to say to you, like if you had $100 million to invest in a pharmaceutical that could possibly treat or prevent or cure cystic fibrosis, or put $100 million into Mediterranean diet, it would make sense that you would put into the pharmaceutical because you're focusing on a medication that's saving lives. Whereas the Mediterranean diet, we're focusing on a problem that doesn't even exist yet. So the Mediterranean diet has been shown, to help with brain health and heart health, but that's a problem that may or may not occur in 50 years. Do you really want to put all of your eggs into that one basket? And it creates this ethical and also financial dilemma between the industries where I don't think it's only just the funding only goes to those pharmaceuticals because of they have all of the power. I think it's just there's different initiatives for these people. And now you're starting to see a lot of these other pharmaceutical companies consider the other side because they're saying, hey, there's a big gap here.
Yeah.
We don't know how to utilize these things, and we need to put more emphasis on the research on the precision nutrition side.
Yeah. And then you mentioned curcumin, turmeric. It is so funny. It is so copiously. There's so much exciting science around something like that, and there's several other examples of that. But you wonder why it's so top heavy on something like that. Like, they spread it out a little bit as far as the research, because we know it's good.
Right.
How much more research does it need?
Well, that happens because when you get so much signal from one nutrient, you're like, what more can I do
what can we
with
find
this?
out? Yeah.
How much? And it's so convincing. Whereas, I mean, things like resveratrol, it is all over the place. You have studies on resveratrol that say, yep, it is the next longevity miracle nutrient. And then you have others that are saying, we can't replicate that. And so that's the noise that comes across in the nutrition field. When you don't have so much consistent messaging or consistent outcomes, it creates doubt. And that's where a lot of the research goes astray.
Okay. Something that for people, I'd like to get your angle on this. I know personally your angle on this, but just for people that, I'm thinking of the listener that says, I'm just going to get my nutrition through foods. Like I'm talking about, Dr. Cole talks about food first, and food is, nutrient density. Okay, I'm going to do that. That person's like, I'm really optimizing my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't have a need for supplementation. What's your take on that?
Food always first. I don't think there's anybody that can argue with that. And obviously you preach that as well. And if food is always first, and if food is the primary source, then it's incredibly challenging to make that your only source or the only way for you to get those nutrients. If I were to go through of what is an ideal diet, I don't even abide by those, which is incredibly challenging. It's like, for example, how many times can I go to the supermarket to get fermented food that's not going to go bad in a few days or in a week, and I'm traveling and I need to be home to eat those foods? And who found sauerkraut in the airport? I mean, actually, that's a great idea. Whoever wants to do that, figure it out. Open up like a genuine sauerkraut stand at an airport. Yeah. I will be there.
And it's me too. I'll be right behind you. But there is, speaking of that, I don't want to develop, but there is surprisingly, especially in certain New York airports, there's more and more healthy things. But I digress. Let's talk about that later. Okay, so you're right. It's even when we do this for a living, I'm still overdoing it on peanut butter sometimes, and not focusing on nutrient density.
That's right. And so, even if, let's just say you ate the perfect diet. Let's say you had 3 to 4 servings of fruits and vegetables each. So not three to 4 servings of vegetables, 3 to 4 servings of fruits. You had, let's just say, 1.2 grams per kilogram of protein from lean, healthy meats. You had high monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats from foods. You ate fish 3 to 4 times a week, at least 1 to 2 times a week. Let's say all of that was correct and done according to the book. That is under the assumption that all of these food sources, whether they're from the ground or from something that ate the thing from the ground, right? So whether it's from the cow or from the grass that the cow ate, you're assuming that the nutrients in those foods are as nutrient dense as they once were. And we have growing evidence that the agricultural practices that we're actually sabotaging our food system with are creating our food that is nutrient deplete. And so if those plants don't have those nutrients, then everything else in the food chain, I mean, do we remember this from might have been like second grade, the food chain and the food web, and the grass is eaten by the grasshopper, and then the grasshopper is eaten by the bird, and the bird is eaten by all of the food chain aspect. All those nutrients get shared across the food chain. And so if it's not in the beginning of the food chain or the food ecosystem, then it's not going to carry through. And that translates to us.
Yeah.
But the caveat that I would say to that is, let's say you did get nutrient-dense food, all of those nutrient-dense foods. Let's say you ate the most nutritious and vitamin C-dense orange on the planet. Can you get enough diversity? Can you get the other, what I call them, non-essential nutrients, right? So there's no DRI for polyphenols. There's no DRI for EPA and DHA. Surprisingly, that's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Of an essential fatty acid that we can't say you need this much every single day. Even if you were to have the best of those things, you can't get enough diversity in polyphenols and prebiotics to actually solve the problem that we're really trying to get to. And so with that, I do think we need some help. We need to get there in a different way.
And spurred this thought in my mind of even the concept of essential and non-essential. I feel like in another 10 years, we're going to see more and more evidence to show, again, like you said earlier at the top of the convo, that was based on survival, right? Of just like living what we need. There's a difference between survival and thriving, right? You talk about polyphenols and there's many other examples, like different compound examples of that. What's your thoughts on that? Even like the paradigm of essential versus non-essential.
I think it has to be essential for the individual or not. And so what might be essential for somebody who has a family history of Alzheimer's and heart disease, EPA and DHA are essential. I don't care what anybody tells you that these are not in the book, these are not in the textbook to be essential nutrients, because you can get it all from ALA, which are from plant-based sources of like flax and chia and walnuts. It's incredibly challenging to argue with the data on the essential aspects of DHA and EPA for those who have risk for heart disease or dementia, specifically Alzheimer's and DHA. So I would first understand like what is your specific profile, and can we categorize you into this phenotype, right? So we went from the age of like genetics, from the Human Genome Project. We're going to say we all know the human genome, and now we're going to be able to target nutrients for that human genome. Okay, well, we figured out that was like not the whole story. There's a lot of other things in the DNA that are, not sending signal. So then we move to the microbiome. Okay, now we learned a ton more. We still don't know everything, but we know a lot. Now we're going into metabolomics and proteomics and glycomics, and now we're in phenomics of like, how do all of these things present to who Will and Ralph is today? And so what I'm saying is what is essential for Will may be different than what's essential for Ralph, may be different than what's essential for Jane, around the corner. Yeah. And so you have to look at the individual and then also say, okay, but is it most people will benefit from this, and what are the downsides? I find it very hard to believe that most people will not benefit from a daily essential fatty acid with omega-3 fish oil from EPA and DHA.
Yeah. Great answer. You touched on the sort of the plant-based sources of these omega fatty acids to the fish. Can you discuss that? I think that's really important because people may think they're the same if they get a vegan omega and maybe even talk about algae and the differences of the long chain versus. I'd love to dissect the different omega fatty acids. Yeah,
so if you look at a biology textbook and you want to understand how do we go from these simple fatty acids to EPA and DHA. So it's funny, one of my biochemistry teachers, he actually tested us on how to spell EPA and DHA. I'm going to mess it up now, but it's docosahexaenoic acid.
Oh my gosh. This is why you are who you are.
I remembered it because I am taking my DHA. So when you look at a lot of these plant-based fatty acids, they go through what is called a desaturation and elongation pathway. So in order for you to get to these 20 and 22 and 24 carbon length essential fatty acids, EPA and DHA, and others in between, you need to desaturate the fatty acid and then elongate it. And it goes through multiple different steps. And we found that actually most people have an insufficiency in one of the desaturase enzymes that are involved in taking ALA, which is a basic omega-3 fatty acid. It is, but it's very challenging for most people to convert it to EPA and DHA, which is kind of the active way that it works in the body. So if you are deficient or low functioning in those desaturase enzymes, and I think it's about, I haven't checked, but I think the data is around 5 to 10% of population actually has a functioning desaturase enzyme activity. And there's multiple different kinds. I believe it's desaturase 5 or desaturase 6. That if you can't have activity or if the activity is compromised, you can't make the EPA and DHA. And the EPA and DHA are what are in the fatty acids, are what in the cellular membrane of our cells. Yeah. And that's what gets metabolized, and that's how our cells talk to each other, and it allows for insulation and communication between cells. So I cringe a little bit when I say the word, at a cellular level, because everything's at a cellular level. But genuinely, like at the cellular membrane level, these things are having that function, and ALA is insufficient to actually solve that problem.
Got it. So from a food standpoint, and we talk about supplementation somewhat, but what are your favorite ways to get these bioavailable omega-3 in food form?
I think the GOAT has to be sardines and anchovies.
Yes.
Such a small density.
Yes.
Or a small amount that you need to eat to get that much EPA and DHA density.
Yeah. So I mean, for the person out there, okay, they're gonna try this. Like, how much should they be eating?
I would say about a can. So a can is about 4 to 5 ounces. I would say if you could do that at least 2 to 3 times a week, you'll get like a base foundation of EPA and DHA.
Yeah, and those smaller fish, they're some of the cleanest fish too,
Absolutely right? Yep, exactly. Because they're lower in the food chain, they're not being eaten or eating other fish that were eating other fish that were laden with mercury and heavy metals.
Who would have thought we talked about the food chain so much in one conversation?
I'm telling you, my son is 1 year old, but at some point when he gets to elementary school, I'm gonna have so much fun doing this science project with him.
All over it. Yeah, you're ready. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other seeing patients still, seeing all the data. What are the most common nutrient deficiencies that you see on labs and in the data?
Yeah, so at AG1, we've actually done some research to actually test this.
All right, let's go there.
But from a clinical perspective, it's easy. You see a lot of insufficiencies in magnesium, vitamin D, potassium. Everybody forgets about potassium.
Yeah.
It is the forgotten
Magnesium
mineral.
gets all the attention.
Which rightfully so. I mean, there's a lot of good data.
I mean, look, it's like magnesium may be the Beyonce, but if Destiny's Child needs all three, sodium, potassium.
That's right. Anyways. Okay. Oh, we'll figure out who the third member is. So
Michelle would be sodium.
Okay.
No offense to Michelle.
But Will, what era of Destiny's Child?
That's the question.
Is it when it was a 4 or a 4 group?
Yeah, no, I just picked 3.
Okay.
Just the 3. That's all it is. But I did. That's funny. That's so funny. We're around the same age. Maybe?
We're gonna date ourselves.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And all the younger people were like, I thought it was just Beyonce. I thought there's nothing before Beyonce, right?
No, there was a group.
Yeah. Potassium.
Potassium, yes. Yeah. So potassium, magnesium, vitamin D are pretty much the obvious ones. And there's a few ways that you can actually measure that. You can do a dietary intake. Mm-hmm. And so the gold standard for assessing nutrient insufficiency is something called the ASA 24. And that is a questionnaire that was developed by the NIH. That's kind of the gold standard of when you do an intake and you do the intake the proper way in a clinical setting and a research setting, you can actually get an understanding of are people deficient in these nutrients or not. And so that's a great way to do it. But you can also look at biomarkers. You look at magnesium via RBC. You can look at, obviously, vitamin D levels in the blood. Potassium's a little bit harder because when you do a potassium level on blood work, if you get like a CMP, you'll see potassium on there, and you see sodium, you'll see magnesium, you see a bunch of other things. One of the things I try to educate a lot of my patients, and even just friends, is just that doesn't tell you about your nutrient status. That just tells you if your kidneys are working fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you say, oh, my potassium was normal, that doesn't mean that you're eating enough potassium. That just means that your kidneys are doing the job at filtering and managing potassium in the blood.
Right.
Because if potassium gets really too high in the blood, you have a lot of other cardiovascular issues.
Right.
But when you look at it from a research setting, the ASA is a very good standard. And so you can do that. And interestingly, at AG1, what we did was we said there's something that pharma does. So we get a lot of inspiration from how these premium companies are doing some research. And we did a pharmacokinetic study, which is pretty cool. My research team pitched it to me. I was like, why haven't we done this before? And why hasn't anybody else done this? And so when I was growing up, and I still hear it today, just eat a healthy diet and you'll get all the vitamins and minerals that you need. So what we did was said, okay, let's actually measure people's intake using this questionnaire, which is validated using the NIH, and then let's have somebody sit in a chair for 8 hours, take AG1 or a placebo, which had no nutrients in it, and let's see if nutrient status changes over this period of time. And what we were able to see is that we saw increases in certain nutrients over the 8-hour period of time.
Wow.
So we know that these things are getting into the blood and they're bioavailable for use.
Yeah.
And that's because we're using bioavailable nutrients. And so there's very different forms of vitamin, of magnesium, of vitamin B6, of vitamin B12, et cetera. And so first thing you want to see is, okay, is this person sufficient? Yes or no? And then are these things getting in the blood? And then can we measure them 3 months later and see what actually happened then? And that's pretty much the right way to do it. If you really want to challenge the question of you get enough from a healthy diet and you don't need anything else, you do a validated questionnaire and you do blood work. And if you could see the insufficiencies in both populations or both scenarios, then you have really good evidence to say, like, hey, I understand we can get all this from our diet, but it's not practical and most people aren't doing it. So here's the evidence to show that we really should be paying more attention to this.
Got it. And you the last time we talked, you mentioned working on some research. You really couldn't talk about it then. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah. So we published we worked on 4 clinical trials, 4 randomized placebo-controlled trials on AG1 Next Gen. We've presented them via multiple abstracts at multiple different conferences. One of them was Fancy, actually, and several others across the U.S. Academia and conference conferences in the country. And it was multiple different areas. We shared on our preclinical using in vitro models and also on the clinicals, and we tested 4 different populations of people: athletes, those who were gut compromised, and the typical American. And we were able to see, like, hey, whether you're an athlete, because many people would assume when I thought of an athlete, I'm like, okay, an athlete must be eating really well. Actually, they're not. Yeah. And then you would think, okay, in the gut compromised population, maybe they're really attentive to their diet. I mean, I know you see a ton of gut health issues, and they're really focused on what they can and can't eat. Totally. And even in that population, there was an issue. And then obviously the standard American, we know that exists. Yeah. And so when you can repeat that in 3 different populations over 4 different studies, there's not noise there. There's signal, and something is going on with our food system, and we need to figure out how to correct it.
Absolutely. And that's why, many reasons why, but bioavailability is so important, right? If somebody doesn't have good health or doesn't have a good metabolic health, like you absorb, right? But also, can it do what it's supposed to do, right? The body's already impeded as far as the conversion or utilization of nutrients, right?
Exactly right. And so there's, the way that I look at it is 3 steps. Obviously, get in the right proper foods into your body. Then you have to absorb it. In order to absorb it, you need a functioning and a integrated GI system. So you want to address for things like intestinal permeability and obviously, microbiome or gut dysbiosis that can impact how nutrients are utilized. Then it gets into the body, so it's absorbed. And then it's assimilated. That's the 3rd step that most people forget. It's like, just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean that it's always being assimilated into the cells. So you can do different measurements and assessments to kind of see how things are functioning in the body. And then you can look at outcomes too of, okay, are we seeing with our patients? Are they feeling better? Is their energy improving? And so the other thing that we did was it wasn't a double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial, but it was a blinded randomized trial where we just gave people AG1 and we said, what do you feel? And, it was blinded, so they didn't know whether they were getting placebo or not. And what we were able to see is that those people, they noticed these benefits. So this comes back to the conversation of, what do we see in people? And then how can we learn from that? And then vice versa. And actually one of the greatest advancements, or many of the greatest advancements in science and in medicine are observations. Yeah. We saw it first and then we said, oh, well, let's figure out why that happens.
Yeah, let's understand the mechanism. Let's do a little, if we could do a sidebar real fast.
Sure.
For people that are like into health sciences, like the differences between or limitations of like an in vitro study, a mouse study, and a human study, and like why each are done. Because we could cite a mice study that I'm excited about, but then someone will say, it's just a mouse study.
Yeah, it depends on what we're trying to study. So what we do is look at it from 3 different phases. There's preclinical, which are like in vitro studies, and then there's animal studies, and then there's multiple phases. There's of human clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, etc. And so the preclinical or the in vitro or in vivo, depending on the model, is designed to understand the how. How does this work? The human trial is more to understand the what and what happens from this. Because if I were to say, hey, I'm going to give you this food, let's just say inulin, right, from chicory, which is a food, or beta-glucan from oats, and I want to know what it does to your body and your gut, it's very hard to see the how is it working unless you actually go in with I mean, even with an endoscope, you can't even do this. You won't be able to go into the microbiome all the way to the distal colon unless you do a colonoscopy or endoscopy to say, what is this doing? And then once you get in there, like, you're not going to see anything. So the preclinical, what they allow you to do is in a petri dish or in a test tube, what is this thing doing in this that we can measure and see very clearly, removing all other variables? Okay, we see this, XYZ increase in short chain fatty acids. And how can we go ahead and test that in humans? Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead and see, okay, we're going to measure this in humans, and what outcomes do we see in the microbiome on the human side? And that gives you a more systematic view of not only the what is it doing, but how is it doing that? And that is a more informed and strategic approach to nutrition science, rather than just saying, hey, we're going to spend $500,000 on this human trial and hope that we see something. You probably want to spend a little bit less money and seeing, is there something here? And if there's something here, let's go ahead and put it into humans. Now, we don't do animal studies for multiple different reasons. But for those who want to do animal studies and the different institutions and different industries, that is another way to say, hi, how is this working in a live organism? Now, it depends on what you're testing. One of the fascinating things is that mice naturally don't get Alzheimer's. It's pretty fascinating. Like, why don't mice get Alzheimer's? But we have a ton of studies using the Alzheimer's mouse model. So you can modify the mice genetically to get Alzheimer's, and then you can test the intervention on those mice. But if you were to try to test nutrition on preventing Alzheimer's in mice, you're going to say, wow, these mice never get Alzheimer's. And you're going to think it's because of the nutrition that they're eating, but actually it's just because that model doesn't get that disease.
Right. And isn't the mice, the lifespan of a mouse has something to do with it too, right? Because a lot of like nutrition science or whatever you're talking about, humans live longer. So to study something that long, you can kind of extrapolate the data using that. You
can extrapolate the data from an animal model, but it doesn't always translate.
Right. What's good for the mouse may not be good for us, or vice versa.
Exactly. And mice have different detoxification pathways.
Yeah. And they like lots of cheese and
copper wires and walk into a New York City subway, and I promise you they'll eat all of those things and they don't die.
And some humans do that too in New York City. I've seen it.
Yes.
In the subway. But
we're on election day, so let's see how that turns out.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's totally different. You can't apply all things. It's not apples to apples. But we get some indication, hey, like these things are working. And we started seeing that originally in mice and ultra-processed foods. Incredible work. Like, so grateful for that animal study that was able to show the impact of ultra-processed foods on mice that then translated to humans. And now we're like, hey, by the way, that thing that comes in a package and could stay on the shelf for 3 years, probably not the best thing for your arteries.
Yeah. All the money we spend, sometimes common sense rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish so. Okay, I love that. So what other nutrient deficiency? Let's talk about homocysteine and what nutrients are important. You mentioned it earlier, so I want to touch on why that's so important, that biomarker, and how to get it down.
Yeah, so homocysteine is the sandpaper to our arteries, pretty much.
I like that. All right.
So it's not going to poke a hole in your vessels today, but if it is over a long period of time, it probably will. And so that's kind of what sandpaper is. Or a great analogy that I use all the time with patients and with when I'm lecturing is erosion. Homocysteine is an erosive compound that over time becomes problematic. And think of it like sandpaper that's constantly pushing against the arteries. It creates inflammation in the arteries. And when you create inflammation or you compromise the artery lining or the vessel lining, you can cause an inflammatory response, which then causes an immune response, which then causes other major things like heart disease and stroke and even other worse things like dementia. And so the fascinating part about homocysteine, it's very responsive to B vitamins. Not all B vitamins, but vitamin B9, so folic acid, always in the methylated folate form. B12 as methylcobalamin. There's other forms that are helpful too, but methylcobalamin is probably one of the most common. Vitamin B6 in the form of P5P. These are active forms. Most people forget about riboflavin, which is very important in the methylation cycle or in the recycling of B vitamins and homocysteine. And so what ends up happening is that in this cycle, let's say one of those nutrients is insufficient or deficient, you get a clogging of that cycle. If you look at a biochemistry textbook, it literally looks like a circle. And so it's very easy to say, well, if you stop it at point 2 in the circle, then obviously everything before point 2 is going to get backed up and homocysteine becomes higher. And so what we do with the B vitamins is say, well, we just need to nudge the body a little bit, give it these nutrients to help recycle the homocysteine so that it can be processed into cysteine, which is another amino acid. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can also go into a whole deep dive into MTHFR and MTRR, but assuming all genetics are working as designed, that is why these B vitamins are important.
Right, which is even more so for people that are interested in methylation, and we look at that raw gene data for telehealth patients, the requirement's even more, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And it also depends on your age. As you get older,
stress levels
impact the function. And then we're talking about epigenetics, right? So how is our environment impacting the function of these nutrients? And it's very hard to measure. So if you look at, individuals who have, single nucleotide polymorphism, say that 3 times fast.
I try to.
It's hard.
I can't do the DHA, but I can do that.
You can do that one.
Someday,
well,
Dr. Esposito.
That's okay. Well, you just got to write it down on the next card every day.
Now you've challenged me.
When you look at these polymorphisms or these mutations of MTHFR or other ones, we see that as people age, these enzymes become less efficient. And what ends up happening is that they work less. And then something that didn't bother you when you were 10, 20, 30 years old, all of a sudden at 40, you're feeling it.
Yeah.
Great example of this is alcohol. There's tons of people who are 21 drinking and they're back at work the next morning in the morning at 8 a.m. And it's like it never happened. And now you're 40 years old and you're like, wait, I can't have more than one drink because I'm going to feel horrible the next day. And that's because of the accumulation and the impact of not just the environmental stressors of the alcohol, but everything else, the poor sleep. Yeah. And now that enzyme is not functioning very well, and now the alcohol becomes a bigger problem.
Got it. Okay, you mentioned AG1 Next Gen. I knew that you had formula changes, and a lot of people ask me, and I didn't have the full answer, so you're the guy to go to. What's the difference between the OG AG1 to the Next Gen?
Yeah, so the AG1 is still around. We sell it on Amazon and in Costco. And when I came on as Chief Science Officer, I looked at the formula. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. We could do better. And here's how we incorporate some of the latest science and the research in it. So AG1, the original formula, has a human clinical trial on it, has other preclinical trials on it showing it has a positive impact on the microbiome and on GI tolerance. So absolutely a huge win there for the brand that's been around for 15 years. And when we look at AG1 Next Gen, what we did is we changed a few ingredients in there. Because obviously science and research changes. So we've upgraded to a 5-strain clinically studied probiotic blend with one of the most well-researched probiotics, Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, plus 4 others. We've modified some of the B vitamins in there to have a little bit more vitamin B12, a more advanced vitamin B complex, just to make sure that we're staying updated on the latest research around these B vitamins. We've also modified a few other little things in there, such as matcha green tea. There's tons of research coming around matcha green tea. And our approach is not, how do we have our replacement for matcha? That's not what we're trying to accomplish. But what we're trying to say is, if you were going to have matcha every single day and you wanted it on a more sustainable foundational level, what is the amount that you would want? And so we've incorporated that in there because I do believe that these things compound upon each other over a daily basis, and it provides more micronutrient and phytonutrient diversity. Yeah. So that's the main differences.
Amazing. But the taste is the same. You actually have different flavors too.
Yeah. So AG1 Next Gen comes in citrus, tropical, berry, and then the original.
Got it. So people love to hear about matcha, and I haven't had a chance. Like, what's some of your favorite studies around matcha? Like health benefits, even not specific studies. Just
So one of the major benefits is around focus. And obviously that's from the theanine and the little amounts of caffeine in there. It's amazing how fascinating and intelligent nature is. It's like, we're going to make this herb, this plant, have caffeine in it. But, oh, by the way, we're just going to add theanine to it. And whoever decided that, kudos to you.
Kudos to God.
Who figured that out. to Mother Nature, whoever did it, to make sure that we actually have that is synergy in nature at its best.
Yeah.
And the impact of that is incredible. The other things that I like about matcha is around the good epidemiological data around cancer prevention, specifically around breast cancer prevention, which I really like. I don't treat it and I don't see a lot of it, but anybody who's like, hey, what does matcha do? I'm like, it's probably one of the most cancer protective teas that you can have on a daily basis.
For sure. I love that. I love that you highlighted God is great at product development. When in doubt,
better than I am.
Check out the R&D from God. Okay, so sleep. One of the things we track for telehealth patients is like getting REM and deep sleep improved, getting heart rate variability improved, like these signs of the parasympathetic tone improving. I know you guys have been up to some stuff to support sleep.
We have.
What's the latest science around sleep?
What we're learning around sleep is that a lot of these sleep medications are helping you feel like you're asleep, but you're not actually restoring yourself.
Yeah.
And so sleep is not just how many hours you get in a night or in a day. It's about, are you feeling restored the next day? And it's about rest. And what we're also learning is that aside from the hours of sleep are you getting, what is your heart rate doing? How quickly is it dropping? What's your heart rate variability doing? And how do these things have an impact on brain health, on your body's recovery, on your heart health? And so a few different areas that we're starting to learn around sleep is a few different categories or pillars of sleep that I would like to focus on when I look at somebody from a clinical perspective. Cofactors. Are you getting the right cofactors or nutrients that are responsible for the neurotransmitters that help you sleep? Melatonin, dopamine, serotonin, etc. Are you getting enough support for your circadian rhythm? So nutrients that help support what is day and what is night. Things that help manage cortisol and melatonin at night. Thermoregulation. Temperature is a big deal when it comes to sleep, and we're learning that's actually some nutrients that have an impact on whether your body cools down better than other nights. Antioxidants. This is an area that I think if you haven't looked into it, really need to start looking into it now, because the research will be booming on this very soon, is the impact of antioxidants on the brain. And so what we're seeing is that a lot of sleep disruption is not necessarily because of bad sleep hygiene. It is, but it's what are these oxidative stressors doing to the brain and impacting the way our brain functions?
Yeah, the lack of resiliency.
Exactly right. And do we have enough of these antioxidants in the brain to ward off of these oxidative species that are made in the brain? And then there's obviously the HPA axis. So if you look at those multiple different factors and you say, okay, how do I hit all of those things? But more importantly, when you put the 6 circles together, which is a bomb Venn diagram, where do they overlap? That's a hard thing to really assess. And that's what we spent a few years doing is, I'm not just going to put a multiple different vitamins and minerals and melatonin in a product and say, hey, take this and you're going to get knocked out. It's how do we promote rest and restoration so that you can feel recovered in the morning? And so there's a few questionnaires that people can do. There's the PSQI, which is actually developed here at Pittsburgh.
Board of Tourism for Pennsylvania, right here.
Come here and take your PSQI.
Watch the Jets games and the Steelers.
Yeah. There's that. There's the Are You Sated, which is a questionnaire. And then there's the Epworth questionnaire. All these things are free. You can do them online. Like even if you don't have a sleep device to help track these things can help you assess whether your sleep is optimal or not. And if there's any deviation in those, then you want to understand, is it because I'm just not getting to sleep early enough? Am I not sleeping well enough? Am I not feeling rested? Is my nervous system ramped up? Why am I waking up at 3 a.m. and feeling agitated? All of these things are related.
Yeah. So what are your favorite natural ways to support these pillars of good sleep?
Habits are number one.
Okay.
Ritual is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I have my son is 1 years old, and I've learned that habits are incredibly important, or just routine. I would say routine and ritual is the most important.
Yeah.
And if you step out of that routine, all bets are off pretty much. And our bodies are resilient, but they are scheduled.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why jet lag messes a lot of people up. And so getting into this right ritual of I have my dinner, I'm winding down. I'm not turning on my TV, my cell phone, my laptop, unfortunately, which happens to a lot of people. And sometimes it's not necessarily the screen. It's actually what is on that screen. So if it's an election year, if it's the stock market is crumbling, or whether it's just a aggressive email from your coworker and you're like, why am I reading this email at 10:30 at night around this person who's obviously pissed off, and why are they up at 10:30 at night, right? Like, that's another question. Those are the things that we really should be paying attention to, and we're not. And sometimes we need a little bit of help to just kind of feel chilled out. And so there are some people who are doing, they might take a medication, or whether it's a drink, or whether it's THC, fine, whatever is your thing, but there comes some consequence with those things. And so what we tried to do is figure out how can we do that without having any of the consequences of like alcohol.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite, let's just say, nutraceuticals, herbs, botanicals, micronutrients, compounds that are supportive of that parasympathetic, that doesn't have that maybe potential pitfalls of these other things like THC and pharmaceuticals?
Saffron.
Love it. So talk about saffron. You give us a chance to talk about it.
Love saffron. One of the world's, maybe the world's most expensive herb.
Which people love to hear.
Yes.
They love to hear that.
It is premium. It is not cheap. And even harder is to get a saffron that's standardized, right? So not only is it just red, but does it have what that red thing actually does? And there's a ton of research showing that saffron, which, I didn't learn this until we knew about saffron for quite a while, and a lot of people use it to help with mood and apathetic type of emotions, which actually works great for that. The other thing that we didn't realize is it actually helps with feeling refreshed in the morning. That's a very unique attribute of a restoration or restorative herb. Very rarely do you have an herb that says, yes, it helps me relax at night, and it also makes you feel not lethargic in the morning. Saffron does that. So what I've noticed in a lot of patients that when they start using saffron is they're saying, I don't really need the snooze button anymore. Like, I am up and my alarm goes off and I'm out, and I don't have difficulty getting out of bed. And that has a lot to do with the way the brain functions. My follow-up, obviously everyone's favorite, is ashwagandha, which I'm also a big fan of. But, given that we want to be a little bit different, phosphatidylserine. Huge fan of phosphatidylserine, helping regulate cortisol levels, because the body needs to know when it's night and when it's morning. Yeah. And if cortisol is high at night, then there's an issue with our circadian rhythm, and then phosphatidylserine can be quite helpful in that respect.
I love that. So you guys have really been working around the science of sleep, and it's really the first ever, like, from AG1, the first ever, like, not AG1 thing out in the world. It's a big deal.
Yeah, and that tells you how much.
Yeah, this is intentional.
Yes, it is intentional, and it's with conviction.
Yeah.
We don't do things, and I don't do things, whether it's with my patients, whether it's in R&D, or whether it's with my students. I do not do things unless I'm entirely convinced that it will have an impact. And that is something that is transmitted throughout everybody that I work with. Are you convinced? Do you say this with conviction? If so, I believe you, because then we're going to move forward with it. And it takes a lot of time to be convinced of a lot of these things. Does ashwagandha work? Yes. Does theanine work? Yes. Does saffron work? Yes. Does valerian work? Yes. But are you convinced that they're going to have that impact at that level of use for most people? And it took quite a little bit of time to figure that out. And once you go away from the AG1 to AGZ, you need to really be convinced that this thing is doing what it has to do. Yeah. And the guiding light is morning people. The best way to start your morning is really the night before. And if you could prepare that going into bed, the next day is going to be a success. Yeah.
So they have AG1 during the day. Like, what would be the AG protocol?
AG1 in your morning. We also have vitamin D3 with K2. So active forms of vitamin D3 and active forms of vitamin K2 as MK7 and MK4. So that would be in your AG1, depending on whatever levels you need. If you need 1,000 or 4,000, whatever works for you. We also do an omega, so AG omega, very high quality, tested for heavy metals, EPA and DHA. So that would be like your daily stack during the daytime. And then anywhere from like an hour to, 30 minutes before bed. Actually, I've even seen it have an impact, a few hours before bed. AGZ, you incorporate that in. A nice little pleasant chocolate or chocolate mint or berry flavor, and it really does solve the problem.
Yeah, that's a great point, is that these are not sedatives in the way that they can still drive, they can still live their life. This is just, a lot of it's GABAergic, right? It's supportive of these GABA pathways, that's resting, digesting.
Absolutely. It's a parasympathetic mimetic in a way, right? Exactly. It's how do we support that parasympathetic nervous system. And I've never said this before, but I sometimes use it in the afternoon where I'm like, it's 5:00, and where most people will go for the bar to get a drink, I'm like, I'm having some AGZ.
Yeah, AGZ mocktail.
Chill. We could do that too. Absolutely.
If they want to ask me about it, we could do AG1 mocktail would be a good idea.
I mean, we have a few recipes if you want to give it a try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something else I want to talk about real fast before we go is the efficacious dose. You kind of touched on it a little bit, because brands can smack, this adaptogen or that nutrient on a label, and it's just there from a marketing standpoint more than anything else, right? That's why the dose matters, right?
Yeah. It also depends on the intent.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we looking to take ashwagandha in a standardized dose to help us with sleep? If that's the case, then yes, you want ashwagandha at least 300 milligrams at 5% methanolydes to make sure you're having that impact. Or if you want chamomile, you want to make sure that it's standardized to apigenin, right? And so you want to make sure that these things are standardized to an active constituent if the goal is for sleep support, right? And that's really important when it came to the formulation of AGZ. On AG1, on the other hand, a lot of these nutrients are in there for nutrient diversity.
Yeah, right? That's a good point.
And so do we think that everybody needs to be having grapes and or grape seeds and phytonutrients from beets and carrots and broccoli? Yes. Is there an effective dose for those things? I don't know. You tell me.
There's no research around
what's
that.
the effective dose for broccoli? I have no idea. But when you look at the probiotics, we're saying, hey, look, there are effective doses for these things, and the research is pretty convincing there. So we're going to incorporate it at this level, at this percent, and we're going to make sure that that's going to have an impact. And by the way, we're going to add some prebiotics in there because most people are not getting enough of those things, and that's how we formulated AG1 for a specific target. Whereas AGZ has a job to be done. The job is we want you to feel relaxed and restored going into bed, and the next day you feel refreshed. And that's the job to be done for those two things.
So there's something to be said for, and you brought up a great point, of the synergistic effect of certain compounds, or like you said, just if nothing else, diversity from a plant compound, right?
Absolutely.
For the microbiome. Okay, as you know, you did this last time, I believe, but the podcast is called The Art of Being Well. At the end, we have your Art of Being Well. I forgot what I asked you last time. It's going to be different. It's different every time, nearly. This is Dr. Ralph Esposito's Art of Being Well. First question is, man, I probably asked you this, but maybe it's changed. What's the most disgusting healthy food that you eat, that you do it for health benefits, not for taste?
The most disgusting, as in palatable?
You do it. You tolerate it, but you do it for health benefits. You can respect it because of its health benefits, but it's not like, I love that.
Ginger turmeric shots.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you making your own? Are you getting them somewhere?
I get it at a local health food store that gets it fresh. It's so spicy.
Yeah.
But I know what that ginger's doing for my gut. I know what that turmeric is doing for my gut. It's worth it.
It's worth it. Yeah. That sounds potent.
It
comes to mind.
You could smell it for a few hours. I mean, I also mentioned they sometimes put garlic in it.
Oh my gosh. There you go.
That's rough. It's good around Halloween, warning off vampires. Not when you have to go home and your wife is like, what is that
Unless
stench?
your wife's a vampire.
Or that would be it. Or you work in a pizzeria.
Yeah, right. What's the weirdest thing you've done for your wellness that you're willing to admit on a podcast as a professor at NYU? What are you willing to admit?
What is the weirdest thing that I've
out of
done?
the box? People, people have said rectal ozone. Look, weird is relative, but they're coffee enemas, drinking your urine. I mean, I've heard guests say the most wildest things, and then sometimes it's not that wild.
The weirdest thing that I have had done was I have had acupuncture in places that are very sensitive.
Okay.
But it was for medical necessity. I was in training, and we have to practice these acupuncture points.
Okay,
right?
got it. That's a good answer.
There are acupuncture points that are in areas that are typically covered.
Okay.
And so we had to do it.
Acupuncture's never done that on me. Must have not needed it.
Yeah, well, bless you.
Would you recommend it?
Acupuncture?
No, but to the meridian points that are less common.
They're very effective for prostate issues.
Okay.
And very effective for incontinence. Okay. So yeah, if you're having those issues,
Certainly.
As an acupuncturist, I've done them on patients before, but doing it to yourself is a different beast.
It's dedication.
Yeah.
It's dedication to the art.
Commitment to the medicine.
Yeah. Where's somewhere you've traveled that should be on other people's bucket list?
The Algarve coast in Portugal.
Wow.
It's my most favorite place to go.
Wow. What about it?
You can walk around and find carob on trees. You can find figs all over.
Yeah.
The olives and the olive oil. I'm on a big olive oil kick. I'm searching the world for the best olive oil. I'm trying all these different brands and products. I'm convinced that olive oil is the secret. And that was the one place that I just tasted the best olive oil. And I was like, this is incredible.
Why are you so wild about olive oil?
I think it's underappreciated. And when you look at different populations that are, when you try to find the common denominator in a lot of these different populations, whether it's blue zone or whether it's just Mediterranean, olive oil shows up a lot.
Yeah, it's a common thread.
Even in California. It's, yes, it's not Mediterranean, but it's an incredibly potent nutrient. And I'm starting to do a lot of research on the polyphenols in olives that we're starting to learn, you really don't need a lot of this. And one of the fascinating things that I'm thinking about is, well, what's the equivalent to a tablespoon of olive oil? And could we get that in other different olive oils? What species of olives? Yeah. It's fascinating. So go to the southern border or the coast of Portugal. Lagos is incredible.
Amazing.
Like, have to go.
Okay, it's on my bucket list now. My wife actually wanted to go. There's so many people going to Portugal.
Yeah,
it's like a booming in tourism,
and it's also just such a lovely and welcoming people there.
Yeah,
they speak English incredibly well.
That's helpful.
Yeah,
for me.
It's super helpful.
Yeah,
I speak Italian and English. I don't speak Portuguese, but the food there is also fresh. Geez. Okay. Now I know where I'm going this summer.
On your way back to the airport.
Yeah.
Where's somewhere you haven't been that's on your bucket list?
I want to go to Japan. I want to see a little bit more of that culture there of Tokyo and understand their way of living. It's very unique. Just the history there is incredible, and understanding their approach to health is unique. They tend to have a healthier population. Why is that? Why are their younger generations much healthier than our kids in elementary and high school? Why is that happening? I think a lot of it has to do with their family traditions. They're in the U.S. and now even in some parts of Europe, we're noticing that the family dynamic is being split, not intentionally. It's just, look, again, my wife and I, we both have full-time jobs, and who's gonna cook dinner when you finish work at 6:00? And the most important thing is okay, make sure the kids eat, or my son eats, or in general the family, make sure the kids are fed, and then we're just gonna go on our merry way and make sure that they're good and everything else is fine. But the human, the dynamic of the family is underappreciated, and I think that's one culture that tends to hold that. But not just within their immediate family, but within their community. They're very community oriented. And if you also look at Italy, and buy some Italian parents off the boat, Italian, Sunday dinners was pretty much every dinner, is you'll see that population, they have dinner together and they just stop. And we should be able to learn something from just the pause.
Yeah.
Can can we learn from what is that pause actually happening? Because sometimes we always think, what can I do to improve my health? And I'm thinking, what can we not do? What do we need to start doing less of to allow us to focus more on being present?
Yeah.
And it's something that I work with, in with my psychotherapist, which I think everybody should do, because in this day and age, when you're bombarded by social media and all of these videos, and by the way, now it's on TV, right? You could just get TikTok and YouTube and Instagram on your TV. We're bombarded by these things. And so what can we do to take a step back and say, where's my peace coming from? Mm-hmm. And that's part of the ritual aspect. Like, what is that one part of your morning?
Yeah.
And I wake up at 5 a.m. intentionally. My wife thinks I'm crazy. She's like, why are you up till 5? You can sleep until 6:30 at least. I'm like, no. It's quiet. That is my silent time. It is dark outside. The sun's starting to come up. Or even at night, the last hour of my day, quiet. Now, I would love to have quiet at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but that's not the world that we live in. But I would love to see how they investigate
wise
that.
Wise words. What's a book you've read? It could be fiction, nonfiction, that people should add to their... I'm having a running Art of Being Well book club list. So what should I add to the list?
I just read it. I would say I just listened to it because trying to read these days, unless you're commuting or is challenging, is Let Them.
My wife listened to it, so I was in the car. She listened to audiobook. For people that don't know, it was great.
Yeah.
It was
Incredible. Essentially, it's a way to focus your mind and your energy on the important things, mm-hmm. and to get away from what I would say the monkey mind.
Yeah.
So one of the main aspects, and Mel in the book is what the author, she also another incredible podcast if anybody wants to listen. Yeah. Not health related, but kind of.
Like
Mel
personal
Robbins.
Development.
Yeah. But it's still mental health, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so in the book, Mel Robbins, what she'll say is, let them, and then let me.
Yeah.
Right? So
let people do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Like we try to micromanage and control everything, or have inner resistance to what is.
Absolutely right. So if you are watching your partner, sabotage themselves by not moving and eating junk food and, binging on certain foods or alcohol, let them, and let me exemplify what I think my life wants to be. And as a clinician, I see this all the time. It's like, I'm not going to convince this person mm-hmm. to give up their drink every night, or I have a patient who had Margarita Mondays and Taco Tuesdays. I was like, that is a rough way to start the week. Let them have that, and let me focus on how I can help them in the moment here today, because then it takes the stress off of micromanage or even just control over, here's what I can monitor, here's what I can do to help these people. And then obviously, or eventually, they will come across and kind of say, okay, I want to be a little bit more like that. And so I actually do that a lot with my nephew, and also my son. Is like, you don't want to exercise or go do these things? Totally fine. I'm going to go do those things. Mm-hmm. And you could decide what you want to do. But I'm not going to go ahead and just, binge watch on social media or doom scrolling. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and be productive. Yeah. So that book, it had an incredible impact on how I think about things. Yeah. Even if you're just growing as a professional in the corporate world, like, it's tough, man. Like, nothing is easy. And if you could just figure out how to let them do them and you do you. Yeah. I mean, we've heard that before, right?
Yeah,
and
so true.
Has a huge impact on your mindset.
Yeah. In most cases, it's wonderful. And then I'm thinking of like, hey, you have a 1-year-old. There's limits to that theory, right? Yeah. Sometimes you just make the little punks do what they don't want to do.
That's right.
Not at 1, toddler and like kids' age. Yeah. Man, if my kids just did everything they wanted to do, we'd be in a rough place.
We'd be in a different world. Yeah.
Context, but it's a great book. I love it. My friend, where do people go to learn about your work, what you're doing with AG1?
Yeah. So Ralph Esposito on all handles. So on Instagram, Twitter, Dr. Ralph Esposito, and then also at drinkag1.com, where you'll find a little bit more information about the research that we're funding, the research that we're supporting, the research that we're publishing, and my incredible team, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Brilliant people, way smarter than I am, and they make me a better clinician, they make me a better scientist, they make me a better leader. It's all of that information's there, and you can learn about the incredible work that we're doing.
That's cool. Amazing. You know who texted me? Not to digress. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She said, "Take care, Ralph."
She's one of my best friends. I've known her.
I remember you guys knew each other back in the day when she was in New York. I didn't know how you knew each other, but
funny story, and she'll say the same. We were I was in New York. She was in New York at the time, and she just saw my post, I think, or maybe something on social media, and she's like, that's pretty cool. That's really smart. Like, I want to learn more about that. And I was like, great. I'd love to come talk to you about it in person, because you can't really talk about these things on social media. I met with her in her office, which was right next to Central Park. I remember it was in 2016, 2017. And this was before, like, Gabrielle Lyon was Gabrielle Lyon, right? And that was when muscle-centric medicine started with her.
Right.
And she was like, I remember her original book, or it was a pre to the book that she wrote. And we just kind of hit it off. Like, it's incredible when you meet somebody and you're like, you get it. Like,
she gets it.
Like, Will, you get it. Dr. Lyon gets it, or Gabrielle. It's incredible to meet with those people. And it makes it validating in a way, because you sometimes in this industry, you feel a little bit crazy, right? Like, there's so many times when somebody's like, wait, what? You do sauna on an occasion, not like on a spa day? Like, yeah. And because it's important for my brain. And they look at you a little bit weird. Or you work out almost every day. Yeah, I do, because it's for my brain and my body. And so with her, we clicked, and she's an incredible friend. Really respect all the work that she's done. And truthfully, she's just killing it.
She is killing it.
She's doing a good job.
She is. I met her first around the same time in Salt Lake. We were at some event in Salt Lake, it was like a pediatric orthopedic surgeon group in Utah that had me speak about functional medicine, which kudos to them. It was like amazing that they wanted to learn about it, and she was talking about her thing. If you know her work, she's always talked about this
forever,
for a long time.
Forever. She was protein before protein was cool.
Oh, yeah, exactly. This is just what she does. We were on a plane. We were speaking in Australia just last week, and we flew. You see that?
Yeah.
She sat right next to me.
You're at the same event?
We both spoke at the same event. We didn't know we were on the same flight until we got on the flight, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I could just spend 13 hours with you on the plane. My friend, I have to say this. I want to say this because there's some awesome stuff for the listeners. AG1 has their best offer. You guys can go to drinkag1.com/Will Cole. That's right. drinkag1.com/Will Cole. You'll get a welcome kit. You'll get a free bottle of omega-3s. You get a free bottle of D3K2. Like all the stuff that Dr. Esposito talked about, you got to get. Free bottle of omegas, free bottle of D3K2, 3 AG1 flavor sampler, and you also get to try their new sleep supplement AGZ, all 3 flavors for free. Wow, thanks. That's very benevolent, AG1. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Christmas came early.
drinkag1.com/Will Cole. My friend, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.